Active recall, the most scientifically proven and the best way to study. What is it? How does it work? How can you study using the 10 methods that I give you? How can you maximize your efficiency when using active recall? These are the type of things that I'll be covering in today's video. It's been a long while since my exams, but this video will hopefully help you understand what you need to know about studying. I'm Eddie G. Let's begin. Now, before defining active recall, you should be aware of the traditional methods that we already use when studying, such as highlighting, rereading, or note-taking. As easy as these are, they are only passive learning methods, meaning it only produces passive engagement with the material and it limits retention. Now, if you want to save time and be more efficient when studying, then limit using these passive learning methods and instead use active recall. Whether you realize it or not, you probably already use active recall when studying or in daily life. Active recall is a science-backed and well-known method to actually retrieving information you study, which will reinforce short and long-term memory of material. So in the larger picture, this will be trying to actually remember and retrieve information after reading, checking back on difficult parts, focusing on weaker areas using spaced repetition, and avoiding all-nighters and studying during the times you have high energy. But active recall only works if you know how to use it properly, and there are several ways to study using it using the principles that I'm about to give you. Principle number 1, understanding. So before going deep into a subject or topic, you first need to be able to understand it well enough before you can try to remember it. And here are 2 good ways to understand the material better, so by actively recalling. Number 1, the Feynman technique. Does the information make sense to you, and do you think you're able to explain the learned topic to a 13-year-old? And you can use this method in both ways, first when you understand the topic or later on when you're actually studying the topic. Number 2, scoping the subject. And this is basically taking a bird's eye view and looking at the whole thing to understand it better. You could do this through mind mapping or any format you want, but write or draw out everything you know before diving deeper into the topic. Now, when you're using these methods, your aim is to stay away from the actual content. And here are some things to avoid. Taking notes. Easy as it seems, notes is actually in fact not proved to help your memory in a subject or topic. However, it can be a good way to consolidate your learning. So if you must, you should. So in class, only focus on questions. Then at home, if you want to take notes, you should take notes on the things that are worth taking notes on, such as the stuff that you find difficult. However, do not over-rely on notes, as it will just end up wasting your time instead of actually improving your memory of a topic. Okay, so principle number 2, remembering. Once you understand a subject or topic well enough, we can actually get into learning and attempting to remember the material. And here's when you get ready for the actual active recall methods. Before that, you should know that remembering a topic is built on one core factor above all else. That is the ability to combat the forgetting curve, or in similar terms, spaced repetition. The more difficult it is to learn, the longer that information will stick with us. So if you allow yourself to forget information, review and actually study them at random intervals, then the more likely you're actually to remember it. I'll be making another video on spaced repetition soon enough, so I'm not going to talk too much about it right now. Okay? Method number 1, interleaving. So this is where you mix up chapters, topics, questions, and review and test yourself randomly or differently than you usually would, so you can learn the material more effectively. Method number 2, flashcards. So these are basically questions and answers. There's 2 ways you can implement it: physically or digitally. Physically is through actual cards, writing the question on the front and the answer on the back, and then digitally, there's obviously many apps that you can use, such as Quizlet or Anki. And making flashcards as you learn instead of when studying before an exam is much more effective, as you can just review all those flashcards when it's actually time. If you want to learn for essays or a longer answer, write one that is pitch perfect, keep practicing, keep rewriting over and over again, and then compare it at the end, and over time you'll fill in the gaps. Number 3, similar to flashcards, and a method that I personally use is creating toggle sheets. Type out a question, and then when you click the toggle, it will show the answer underneath. Then when you study, you can just go back over these. And to be even more efficient, just like flashcards, do this as you learn throughout the year, and also avoid writing in the answers. So at the end, when you're actually studying before the exams, you can look back over these toggles and fill in the answers yourselves. And obviously without looking back at the information, because when after you recheck it, see if you got it correct or incorrect, and then look back at the incorrect ones. For this, I would use Notion, but there are also apps such as RemNote, or you can simply use Google Sheets. Number 4, a very popular one, mind maps. Now, just to keep in mind, some of these methods will work for some people, but some will not. For me, mind maps only works sometimes. But like before, you're scoping a topic and try without looking when you're first doing it. Then you look back and fill in the missing points. So a mind map could be a brief one before studying, to re-jog your memory, or it could be a deep spider diagram with every little detail of a topic. So you'll start in the middle with the title, then expand out in branches like a tree, fill out absolutely everything you know on a topic. Repeating this will actually allow better memory of a topic, especially if you don't look back at the information. Number 5, blurting. First, you will read the topic. You don't have to read it. Then you get a blank page, write down everything you know, and then look back and fill in the missing points. Number 6, there's no other better method to study than to actually use questions, papers, whatever other resources you have. Answer them first and go back and then correct it. Then try remember the information that you got wrong. And another way to learn through past papers and questions is to put yourself in an exam situation, exactly how you would write a normal exam. So it's basically a practice test. Number 7, use color coding. Get something right, or if you complete something, in green. If you don't, in red, and if you're in the middle, a yellow. This might apply to any method that you use, and it's extremely useful for quickly identifying where you went wrong, where you went right, what you've completed, or what you haven't completed. Number 8, speak. Whether to someone else, a 5-year-old, to the wall, teach the topic. So this is back to the Feynman technique again. Another way to implement it is through stopping and reciting. So when you read a topic, you stop, you recite the information in your own words, and it doesn't even have to be when you're reading. Number 9, if you want to do well in your future exams, then you have to start as early as possible. And this is where the immediate review comes in useful. So in your own time, or every day preferably, especially in a year with exams, you should look back over the material that you learn. It doesn't even have to be through active recall. Even if you're reading, doing homework, asking questions and connecting the dots, it will improve the overall memory of a topic. So just look back what you learned in that day or prior. And finally, number 10, not related to active recall, although extremely useful, I mentioned it before, spaced repetition, and to make a retrospective revision timetable. And this is a different method compared to the classic study timetables that people make, where they block out specific days of the week to study on a topic. This timetable allows you to get a visual of what you actually need to study on, and focuses on what you need to improve on. So I will be making a video on spaced repetition and how to make a retrospective revision timetable, so I'm not going to go into it too much right now. This video is on active recall. Next, what to avoid. Minimize rereading information unless you're really low on energy. Highlighting. It's not that important, but could be useful if you want to get a quick visual of what you write. Avoid overloading on flashcards, toggles, mind maps, all of the stuff that I mentioned. Avoid overloading too much. It's just going to be too time consuming. So instead, focus on the main things that actually matter, the things that you struggle on, and try not to fill in the answer straight away, but instead use it later when you're actually studying before an exam. All of this applies to every study method I mentioned. Active recall is all about trying to retrieve information, recall it in a way that you understand and remember. Okay, so now, using everything that I've just said, it's time to make a study system. Not a timetable, a system for studying. List out 10 great active recall methods, but I know that that's not enough to actually get you studying. A system lies right below a retrospective revision timetable, and this is what you need to actually saving time and studying efficiently. Firstly, you should try all the study methods that I mentioned, and it doesn't have to be all of them. The ones that sound good, the ones that you want to try it. Then select the ones that work for you. Maybe over the span of a week, test active recall. Only choose the ones that work for you. You're not overloading on all 10 of them. I would pick 1 to 3 of the methods, and this could vary from subject to subject. In the case of school subjects, for example, obviously you'll study differently in maths or a language compared to geography or history. Every subject or course will be different, so how you study will entirely depend on the material and focus of each subject. So when choosing the ones that work, choose it according to the subject. And then finally, make the actual system. Write it down. Then what you should ideally end up with is a way to actually understand a topic, and then 2 to 3 ways to retrieve information. And I actually realize now that the way I said it before might be a bit confusing. So the ways to understand a topic. You can use the Feynman technique. You could scope the subject through mind maps or a spider diagram, using color coding, and immediately reviewing. Then to remember a topic, you can use all the ones that I mentioned before, and by interleaving, using flashcards, using toggle sheets, blurting, practice tests or past questions, and through spaced repetition. Not gonna mention it. Okay, so as an example for the system, I'm gonna say geography. I might start by scoping the subject and asking myself how well I know the topic and understand the topic. Next, I might move on to answering some toggles, correcting, and recalling. Then I could put myself in an exam situation, practice topics, chapters, things that I studied. And then I might reflect and plan. If anything didn't go well, I won't continue it the next study session, and I will make sure I know what to do when I study geography the next time. So I'll also be making a video on how to study and the levels to studying. Hopefully in the near future, I'll make a full studying masterclass with all of these topics. But for today, focus on actively recalling. Now, it's the science stuff, the boring stuff, but I'll quickly fire out some things about active recall that you might want to know. So, obviously, it's faster and more efficient. Memory is built on what's retrieved and not just the input. More effort and more difficult it is to study a topic, and the longer that things will stick with you. This is because it builds neural connections, enhancing the memory, improved retention, time efficiency, it's effective and structured, reduced burnout. It is more mentally challenging but can be shorter and more focused than passively learning. The confidence in knowing a topic or a subject, and you can identify gaps early on. Those are just some of the basic advantages, not even science, advantages in studying using active recall. If you want to know more, it's easy to research. You can find plenty online. And there you go. What you needed to know about active recall, you hopefully will know now. All you need to do now, if you haven't already, is go back through the steps to actually making a study system through some of the methods that I mentioned in this video. Or if you have any other methods that you found helpful, let me know. I'm only improving in this whole area as well, and this is as much as I know. Don't think you have to over-rely on active recall as well. Obviously, it's great, it's an amazing method to studying effectively, but make sure you know how to use it properly. So apply the stuff, study well, ace those exams, projects, assignments, whatever you have. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you again very soon as I continue making study videos. So very well, and goodbye.